roller coaster in Cosmoland Amusement Park, Japan. This roller coaster in the Cosmoland Amusement Park in Yokohama, Japan has a unique feature. It takes the riders underwater in a particularly startling way. The Vanish roller coaster seems to do just that. It's hurtling along, as roller coasters tend to do, high above the ground, up and down, round and round, you know, the sort of thing, I'm sure. And then, quite suddenly, it takes a very steep plunge down towards a pool of water, and then just as suddenly it vanishes into that pool. And from some angles, it really does appear to take a plunge into the watery depths, but from others, it's evident that there's a tunnel and track that continues beneath the watery appearance. Even so, it's a rather hairy feeling as the water seems to splash up all around the coaster and gives the sense that you have more or less plunged off the rails and into the watery depths. Quite scary, but mostly. The X-Scream thrill ride in Las Vegas is one of the scariest attractions in the world. I imagine even the most fearsome of thrill seekers would have trouble with this bad boy. I can't watch the footage without panicking about what would go wrong. Would you dare it? I know that I wouldn't. A giant Godzilla-themed attraction. Now here's a ride that combines a selection of scary fun-style stuff into one attraction. In this ride, the visitors zip line their way into the mouth of a so-called life-sized Godzilla that sits in the middle of this theme park. Riders begin on a platform being attached to a zip line, which is not for everyone, but all the good sorts of scary fun if you happen to like that sort of thing. Then they're flung down said zip line and straight into the belly of the beast. After they get there, they then participate in a shooting game in which they try to stop Godzilla from growing. The Godzilla is 75 feet tall, 82 feet wide, and 180 feet long, so it really is quite an impressive presence within the park, and enough to give you the willies without the fact of flying through the air into its toothsome mouth. 10 points for originality, and a bunch more for extra funness. Formula Rossa. Now, you may well be aware that when it comes to being the biggest, fastest, or even shiniest, the United Arab Emirates generally has it covered. So it should be no surprise that the world's fastest roller coaster can be found in Abu Dhabi in the UAE. The Formula Rossa has a top speed of almost 150 miles per hour and goes so very fast indeed that riders have to wear protective safety glasses to stop them from getting loads of splatted bugs in their eyeballs. Ew! The train itself accelerates out of the station, reaching a top speed in just 4.9 seconds. This is achieved through the use of a hydraulic launch system, which can generate a whole load of velocity. Tianmen Shan Cable Car. Tianmen Mountain in China's Hunan province is 1,279 meters above sea level. That's an impressive 4,196 feet for all of you Americans. The Tianmen Shan Cable Car ferries passengers from the city center to the Air Garden, which is perched on a picturesque top of a mountain. This cable car is delightful in the views that it offers, but it also is somewhat alarming in the sheer height at which it operates and the general sensation of vertigo that surrounds the entire experience. It is, in fact, the longest passenger cable car in high mountains. Kilimanjaro Water Slide. Well, here we are at Wedgie Central Water Slide. Well, actually, it's officially called the Mount Kilimanjaro Water Slide at Aguas Quentes Country Club in Rodovia in Brazil. This Kilimanjaro is significantly shorter than its namesake, but it is impressive in its own way. It measures just under 164 feet, and it's a body slide which doesn't require its riders to use a raft or any other sort of gear to ride on it. Apparently, the experience of being stood up at the top of a slide is so intimidating that as many as 1/3 of the people who make their way to the top actually chicken out and don't even slide down. But for those who are brave enough, the experience is a fast one, during which they may actually reach speeds of up to 57 miles per hour, an experience which guarantees a butt full of bathing suit as you're deposited unceremoniously into the splash pool at the bottom of the slide. Oh, the indignity of it all. Boating at the Iguazu Falls. Than in the 1960s. And this really is a beautiful place, and the insane numbers of visitors that rock up here every year are a testament to that fact. So, if you do like, you can take a jolly exciting boat ride around the falls and enjoy the experience of the place all up close and personal like. These falls are national parks and also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which means that their natural and cultural value is so significant that it should be of worldwide importance. But however beautiful they are, you are definitely going to need a pack-a-mac at this one. Yukon Striker. Yukon Striker is a so-called dive coaster, which is located in Canada's Wonderland in Vaughan, Ontario, and it is one heck of a ride. This one may, in fact, be scarier than the last and offers a whole range of opportunities to get so scared that you wind up in brown trouser territory. It starts off at a regular sort of pace before heading up a long ramp to a terrifying teetering top, followed by a breakneck plunge down a vertical ramp and into a head-chopping sensation of a tunnel. Such fun! Climb the plank walk in China, known as the most dangerous hike in the world. For those with a death wish or the absolutely insane, a hike up this mountain in China might be the perfect outing. This is the most bonkers hiking trail in the world? Well, probably. It is definitely not a place for you if you suffer from vertigo or, just fear plummeting off the vertical side of a mountain into eternity. From a narrow wooden platform to ladders and footholds in the side of the mountain, the ways to traverse this terrain are unusual to say the least. The plank walk on this mountain is infamous. Just a 30-centimeter wide plank of wood and a harness attached to ropes is what keeps the thousands of thrill-seeking tourists who flock here from meeting their maker. In fact, it is not always enough. There are reports of tourists actually plunging to their doom mid-selfie, or even desperate individuals tragically taking their own lives from this spot. China's Grand Canyon Glass Bridge, where you might actually plunge 300 feet to your own doom and demise. There are absolutely loads of these bridges in China, and they have an estimated 2,300 of the things with glass panels for walkways and sides. Apparently, the booming tourist industry in China believes that people want to experience maximum vertigo when out and about at the country's beauty spots. Because, well, why not? The Cage of Death. Sliding through a shark tank with super thick plexiglass between you and the toothy exhibits may seem tame next to this one, although frankly, the idea of this sounds proper exciting to me, but you know how I feel about crocodiles. This is an unusual attraction in Darwin in Australia's Northern Territory, where visitors to Crocosaurus Cove can actually get into the water with a gigantic saltwater crocodile. Now, it's not quite as mad as it sounds, obviously. After all, feeding your visitors to hungry predators is not really that great of a business model, so it isn't exactly how they do it here. What actually happens is that visitors pop on a thick suit and get inside of a contraption that is reassuringly named the Cage of Death. This is a plexiglass box that's lowered into the water of a crocodile pool, all in the safety of a carefully controlled tourist-friendly environment, of course. From inside the container, visitors can hang out in close proximity to massive scaly reptiles as they swim about in the water. Thunder River Rapids Ride. So, here's a ride which has done some real damage. Well, actually, it's done murders. So this is in no way a recommendation, and is certainly qualified to be in a list of scariest attractions in the world. The Thunder River Rapids ride at Dream World was an actual death trap, and it turns out that it is nothing short of a flipping miracle that it didn't kill people any sooner than it did. In October of 2016, 4 people would be killed when this murder machine had malfunctioned. The results of the inquest into the tragedy would determine that the ride was a ticking time. Verrückt Water Slide. The word verrückt is German for crazy, or insane. So let's see if this has an appropriate name at all, shall we? Well, yes it does. And certainly not in any kind of good way. This ride was located at a water park in Kansas City, Kansas. The general premise of the ride was that the rider was placed into a kind of car at the top before being propelled down the slide, which was a caged-in affair. A steep slope down followed by some high-speed straight and fast to finish, up to 70 miles per hour in fact, and that was about it. But evidently the safety features of this particular water slide were not exactly the best in the world. It was designed at the park itself, which should set off all the alarm bells ringing in your head. The slide had also been featured on the Travel Channel show Extreme Water Parks in 2014. This water slide was considered extreme before its permanent closure in 2016 after an absolutely hideous incident when a 10-year-old boy was killed by decapitation. Action Park. Action Park was a totally notorious amusement and water park located in Vernon Township in New Jersey. This infamous place was known for all the wrong reasons. Action Park would be open to the public back in 1978 and soon became known for its unique attractions, which brought in crowds from all over the greater New York metropolitan area. The trouble was, though, that many of the rides, although they were unique, were actually very poorly designed, and accidents and injuries became commonplace. The staff were undertrained and very often were also underage. The guests and staff were also oftentimes under the influence of adult beverages, and their safety record, funnily enough, was completely appalling. Although the whole thing is a bit of a joke in many ways, you know, the nicknames for the park included stuff like Class Action Park, Accident Park, Traction Park, and Friction Park. At least 6 people actually died as a result of the incidents that occurred on the various shoddy rides and other general mishaps that happened in Action Park. Aqua Loop Water Slide. Well, here's a fun one for all the water slide fans out there. If there are such people anymore, I know it must be nearly impossible to hold your phone properly when you're plummeting down a water slide, and then you have all that stress of trying to keep it from getting wet, so it seems unlikely that anyone's left in any sort of phone-free position to enjoy a water slide these days. But here we are with a jolly trapdoor-style ejection water slide. The victim, rider, stands on that trapdoor and waits to be plopped down into the tube. It's a fully enclosed loop-de-loop water slide which is transparent so that the speeding water riders can be seen from outside as well. What a fun one for those who enjoy the vicarious thrill of watching other people having all the funs. How very exciting. And then when you think that you've had all the fun you could possibly expect from a water slide, it dumps you out at the end completely unceremoniously into a splash pool where you receive your wedgie. A full buttload of bathing suit for all of your efforts. Lucky old you. Falcon's Fury Busch Gardens. Located at Busch Gardens in Tampa, Florida, the Falcon's Fury is another one of those drop tower rides, but for some reason this one just seems to lack the flair of the others that we've seen. Apart from anything else, the whole thing is over in a matter of seconds, and that's really not something to aspire to. Beyond the obvious shortcoming of the ride, the drop and swing is just a bit, underwhelming. Even the people who have just had a go on it seem to have all the sorts of expressions that demonstrate disappointment. So at a lengthy 335 feet, this thing may well boast about being the tallest freestanding sky jump drop tower in the whole of the United States, but we all know that size isn't everything, don't we? There's really a lot more to it than just how lengthy it is. There needs to be at least a little bit of build-up. Walt Disney World, Florida. The scariest thing about Disney World is the ticket prices. So, once you've resigned yourself to taking out a second mortgage on your home and downgrading your vehicle just so you can afford to park it there, well, then you can head on inside and find the second scariest part of a trip to Disney World, the lines. And when you eventually make it through the shock of the cost and the endless queuing systems, then you might be able to partake in a ride or two by the time that you've left in the day. And if you do, the Space Mountain is likely one of the places you'll be headed. One of the most famous and beloved roller coasters of all time, Space Mountain is a classic that never seems to go out of style. This iconic ride at Disney's Magic Kingdom theme park has been delighting visitors since it first opened all the way back in 1975. The space-themed coaster begins in the perfectly themed themed futuristic space station where riders clamber into the carriages. It then takes a few turns through tunnels in and out of the lights until finally launching into space and into the dark before witnessing all the stars in the surrounding galaxy. The real magic of the ride is the clever way that it uses darkness in order to create additional riding sensations during the experience. And like always, Disney nails the immersive space theming, which is why Space Mountain has remained so popular for so very long. Slide Wheel Water Slide. Well, here it is. This is apparently the very first of its kind in the whole of the United States of America, and it's brand new. How very thrilling indeed. The water park in Wisconsin, known as Wisconsin Dells, there's a catchy name if I've ever heard one, is the proud owner of a new and extra fancy water slide. The Mount Olympus is the rotating twisty-turny attraction that was created by those water slide wizards over at Whitewater Design. There are actually only 2 other rotating water slides in the whole wide world. One of them is in Poland, and the other one, of course, is in China. This one, though, in Wisconsin, which is the water park capital of America, apparently, is 80 feet tall and 100 feet wide. A ride through this cross between a water slide and a Ferris wheel takes about 96 seconds in total, and you get all the feelings. G-force, speed and air, all of it during this ride. And up to 25 miles per hour while you're doing it. Wanxing Ordovician Theme Park. Located in China's southwest region, this theme park is proud of its super scary and unique attractions. It's where they have the largest collection of extremely high-up attractions in the whole world. There are glass walkways where you can give yourself the heebie-jeebies by simply looking down. There's a cliff edge swing which dangles over the edge of a 1,000-foot high cliff. And the worst thing by far might be the so-called gap bridge, which is basically a horizontal ladder with massive gaps between each step. These delights can be enjoyed by visitors while wearing a harness as they hop dangerously between each rung of the ladder and try really hard not to fall down the gap. Goliath, Six Flags Magic Mountain. Given that this theme park ride is simply too big to be called a regular old roller coaster, and they had to make up a new word for it, it's safe to say that it's probably quite an exciting one. Yes, this so-called hyper coaster is apparently so very fast that it needs its own category of hype. The Goliath is a coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain in Southern California, and it certainly meets up to expectation. This is a big one. It takes forever to trundle up the extra long ramp to the giddy heights at the start of the ride. And then, when you finally do make it up there, there's a moment which feels like being suspended midair before the whole thing charges down an almost vertical drop of 255 feet at a hair-raising 85 miles per hour. It's an invigorating experience, and then you're suddenly plunged into one of those delightful head-chopper effect tunnels, and almost immediately into yet another giddying descent. The ride rises and falls, offering sensations of weightlessness, and then the intense dragging feeling of gravity, up and down for an entirety of the 4,500 feet of track. Volcano boarding. Now, while there's a whole industry which seems to be uncommonly interested with getting rather too close to volcanoes, there are some nutters for whom the casual, sneaker-melting stroll near the molten lava is insufficiently terrifying. They've taken it all a rather bit further, but perhaps too far, who can possibly say. On a normal day, the average danger-loving visitor here is able to take a walk up to the volcano, where you then step between streams of lava which glow menacingly across the landscape. The heat of the rocks beneath your feet is likely going to melt your shoes, and we've already learned that this volcano is always bubbling away. The possibility of eruption is on the cards, so that's what makes it such a tourism hotspot. That and the fact that if you take a tour, you'll literally toast marshmallows over the hot rocks of the volcano. Now, you don't get to do that every day, do you? If you want to push it to the extreme, you can basically take a ride down the side of the active volcano on a wooden board. It's basically like sledding, but hot instead of cold, and a teeny bit more dangerous, what with all the spewing molten rock and lack of snowmen. If you do take a tumble here, you don't get a damp behind and frozen mittens. Oh no, you get a burning sensation and hot gravel embedded into your flimsy flesh. After the fact, if you do survive, of course, You may be removing volcanic ash and bits of rock from your unmentionables for days. Yeesh.